Got very still in here. Well, it's exactly six. Hello. Okay. It's exactly 6:30, so why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome to tonight's COTI conversation, brought to you by the combined efforts of the Committee of the Islands and SANCAF Resilience. My name is Bob Moore, and I'm the current president of the Committee of the Islands. Recently elected, having taken over from my predecessor, Bill Millar, in the back there. I know you have to go, Bill, but I wanted to catch you before you headed out. Okay. I'm happy to see such a great crowd, especially with this little batch of rain that came in and this late in the season. Thank you for being here. We'll be recording the program tonight for those folks who were unable to attend. And I'd like to give a special thank you to our COTI members who are here tonight, including our esteemed mayor, Mike Miller. Mike was past president of the Committee of the Islands, so we're in good company here. The work of COTI is powered entirely by our membership, and it's important work. COTI was formed about 50 years ago, a little over 50 years ago, in 1975, with the founding of the city. And the mission remains the same: to ensure the continuity of good local government, to protect the environment, and to preserve the sanctuary character of our barrier island communities. So in many ways, COTI has been, over the years, the watchdog of the Sanibel plan, the Sanibel vision, really working to preserve this paradise that we call home. And we have a full agenda, not just looking to the past, but in the coming years, our committees keep an eye on a number of areas, including the Sanibel plan update that is currently underway, the transportation master plan, the issues of overdevelopment on Captiva, and other areas, including some of the resiliency issues that you'll hear our speaker address tonight. Can I ask our board of directors to please stand for a moment? Take a look around. We have a really talented board of directors to lead these efforts, but we also really value the involvement of our membership. So if any of you are interested in getting involved with one of our committees, we would love to have your participation. You can just grab one of those board members that you saw standing in the room, or you can check out our website at coti.org. All right, I'm sitting here clicking my slides, but they're not moving. So I think I just need to set it here. There we go. So there's a picture of our board members there. And if you are interested in membership, we would love to have you. And you can scan this QR code. You can, there's also flyers out on our welcome table, or just go to the coti.org website. So let's turn our attention now to tonight's presentation. As we approach the 4th anniversary of Hurricane Ian, with all that we've gone through here, there are questions this community naturally has about the future. How well prepared are we for future storms? What's being done to address the impacts of climate change to make our communities safer? And what can we do to address the causes of climate change to align our actions with Sanibel's long-held focus on sustainability? These are complicated but important questions for us to be exploring. And tonight we're fortunate to have a new member of our community here to help us start to unpack some of them. Ashlee Painter, our new Chief Resilience Officer for the City of Sanibel. Ashlee was hired in her new role as Chief Resilience Officer just under a year ago, in July of 2025. Her position serves as the city's lead establishing practical and actionable strategies to improve Sanibel's resilience to environmental threats and challenges such as rising sea levels, hurricanes, and other climate-related impacts, and increasing the city's sustainability practices, including the use of renewable energy. She was previously with the city of Oldsmar, Florida, where she served as environmental management supervisor. There, she supervised the sustainability coordinator, the environmental specialist, and the utility operations coordinator. Ashlee was responsible for writing and managing resilience and public works grants. She also served as the project manager for resilience and stormwater projects. She majored in biological sciences at Clemson University, where she earned her undergraduate degree, and has earned 2 graduate degrees, one in marine biology at James Cook University, and second in coastal sustainability at the University of South Florida. She has over 20 years experience working in environmental conservation education, domestically and internationally. So she really brings a wealth here to our community. In tonight's program, Ashlee will address sort of the basic question, what is resilience? Where we started as a city in this work, because this didn't start just with Hurricane Ian. Major and minor disruptors that we need to plan for, what has been done already, going back to 2020, and where we're going, looking to the future, and how all of us can be a part of and being involved in that. At the end of her talk, there's going to be time for question and discussion. We have a mic that will run, so keep your questions in mind as we go. And please join me in welcoming Ashlee Painter.
Hi, thank you, Bob. I'm going to keep my water here because I've been doing a lot of talking today and my mouth gets very dry. I don't talk a lot in a normal day to day. So as Bob said, my name is Ashlee Painter. I am the Chief Resilience Officer here at the City of Sanibel. Thank you for having me. This is my first official talk as for this position specifically and on resilience. So you guys get to be my guinea pigs. Congratulations. All right. So what is resilience? Actually, before I let you read that, I'm going to ask a question because we're a little interactive tonight. How many of you have heard the word resilience before this position? People started talking about a chief resilience officer. Okay, fair amount. How many people actually know what that word means or think they know what that word means? A little less. Pretty good. Okay. So how many of you have heard the term bounce back when they hear resilience? Yes. So I don't like to use the word bounce back for several different reasons. This is the definition I like to use. The capacity of individuals, communities, and systems to survive, adapt, and grow in the face of stress and shocks, and even transform when conditions require it. And the reason I don't like to use the word bounce back, because that assumes that you're going to go back to what you were. And after a big shock or a stressor, you can never, ever get back to where you were. As much as you would really love to get back to where you were, you have to grow and you have to change and you have to adapt to what the new is. So when we talk about resilience, we're talking about getting to that place where we can get better, not just back to where we were, but we want to be better than we were before. Sometimes that's really hard. And we all know that change is really hard and not a lot of people like to say that we're going to do something different. They like the things the way that they like the things. And that's the reason that you moved to where you moved is because you liked it a certain way. As we all saw from Hurricane Ian and from all the different storms, things have been a little slow sometimes getting back to where you thought they should have been at a certain point. Some things have gone faster, some things have not, but we're getting there. All right, so my role. These are the main things that I, in my position, do. Long-term planning for climate impacts. While resilience covers a bunch of different things, for the City of Sanibel, my job description and what they wanted for this city is to deal with climate impacts, because that's one of our biggest stressors here. Community education and outreach. So not just what the city's doing, but what you can do and how we can work together to move towards a better future. Consulting with different departments. I like to say I'm everywhere and nowhere at the same time because I'm in no department, but I work with every department. So I get to see the overarching of what everyone's doing and the big picture. Sometimes it's good because I can see when people are really down in the weeds and it's a job they do every day, they don't always see the things that are outside the changes. So I get to see those things and point them out. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes they're like, yeah, we already discussed that and we'll move on. We get to have a lot of different conversations. And lead resilience projects. We'll talk about a few of the things that are coming up, but that's one of the things that I do a little bit of different things. So one, all of the resilience projects are not necessarily ones that I will do. They come in different departments, but there are some that are specifically that don't fit in any specific department, that those would come under my management of. All right. Resilient roots. Hopefully you all know that Sanibel is rooted in resilience. We hear a lot about our vision statement for Sanibel and that it's a sanctuary island. Tonight, we don't hear a lot of people talk about our mission as much as we do our vision. So I want to put this up, is that Sanibel stakeholders are stewards of the island and will collaborate to protect environmental assets, promote economic stability, strengthen community engagement, and provide exceptional services and governance. The reason that I put this one up, because we all know it's a sanctuary island and that we want to protect the environment. But this, as Bob had mentioned earlier, is that one of the roles of the resilience officer is that we do look at sustainability. And this is essentially the 3 pillars of sustainability, which are community, economics, and environment. And this mission statement is basically all 3 of those things. So while our vision statement looks more at the overall resilience, our mission is actually closer aligned to sustainability, which is more of the short-term goals of the city. All right, so saving the sanctuary. Most of you, this is going back, kind of a little bit of a history lesson. The first modern settlement of the island was in 1832. And in 1945, the federal government formed the Sanibel National Wildlife Refuge. Bonus points to who knows what that is today. There you go. So that was changed to the Dean Darling Wildlife Refuge in the 60s. And then in 1967, the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation was founded. And this is important because that is where resilience and conservation started in the island. It did start back because everyone, I was actually interested that when the Wildlife Refuge was formed in 1945, they estimated about 700,000 to 800,000 people visited Sanibel annually, just for the wildlife. That's a lot of people in 1945 to come to this island. And our numbers probably still about steady. I mean, at that number. In 1974, the city was incorporated, and it was incorporated because the residents said, hey, Lee County, we don't want to develop. We don't want 90,000 people to live here and to look like Miami Beach that's completely built up. We want to keep our wildlife. We want to keep our conservation, our sanctuaries. And then in 1976, the Sanibel Plan was adopted. How many people have actually read the Sanibel Plan? Oh, about a little over half. The Sanibel Plan, while it does not specifically call out resilience because it wasn't a term commonly used, it is basically a plan for resilience. If you go back to the original Sanibel Plan, there's even a whole section on what to do post-hurricane. And some of those, the things that they talk about in it, almost model exactly what Hurricane Ian and the predictions that come come from that. So the people who started Sanibel, the incorporators, they thought about these things and they thought about what we would do in the event of these events. We talk about major and minor disruptors. For the most part, resilience deals with the major disruptors because those are the long-term things. The minor ones, we're talking about a summer storm. So that's your flooding that's going to happen in your yard or sometimes on the streets in a normal summer day. Cold snaps. We had this happen this winter. Cold snaps here, not the same as cold snaps up north, but we did have some fish kills, things that were happening because there was some prolonged cold snaps, cold weather in the area. Also, had some iguanas that were going around. Fun fact, FWC doesn't normally let you turn iguanas into them, but because there were so many, because of the prolonged cold, they allow residents to just drop off iguanas at FWC buildings around the state. And they had hundreds, if not thousands of iguanas being turned into their facilities. And then short power outages. These are the things that we're going to look at are less than probably 8 hours. The ones that are annoying, but aren't really life or death. And then our major disruptors, hurricanes. Obviously, that's our big thing that we talk about. Pandemics. When COVID came around, no one really planned for pandemics. We didn't really think, when we thought of disruptors, we thought of major events, we thought really weather events. We didn't really think of what the other things happen. Wildfires, if you did not know, I highly recommend taking SCCF's, one of their classes, but Sanibel was built and naturally it is a very wildfire prone area. When you have houses and buildings, you don't want wildfires, but that's what nature wants to do here, to restart and rebuild. Other things we think about when we think about major is things like security, cybersecurity, larger things that I don't work directly with, but they are things that the city is looking at as a whole holistic resilience thing. All right. So what's been done? Hopefully you all know some of these things. By the numbers, we're just going to look at holistically. This is just since Hurricane Ian in 2022, because it's really hard for me to pry information out of people prior to that of what projects have been done. And when I say these numbers, these are things that I have deemed to be resilience related. This is not all the projects that have been done by the city, just the ones that are directly related to resilience in some way. So we've had over 85 projects done in the past 4 years that have directly related to resilience. About 25 of those are infrastructure, that's buildings, stormwater, wastewater, transportation. 20 have been nature-based. About 15 or 16 have been policy and ordinances. There was a good bit post-Ian that council and the planning department did to go through our ordinances to make it easier. One, easier for people to build, but also making sure that we're building back in a resilient way and not just building back in a way that's going to destroy property again and again and again. 10 plans or studies. We like to study things. We like to have plans because if you don't have a plan, you don't know where you're going and things become haphazard a bit. And then when I say 15 plus other, a miscellaneous category, if you will. So that's looking at things like cybersecurity and social administrative kind of things that don't fit in in these specific categories. I put this link up here. I know you can't click on it right here, but if you do get the slides later, we do have a resilience dashboard that you can click on. It's interactive and you can zoom in with a map around the city and you can look and see where these projects are actually happening and what they are. It does show their status, whether it is not started, it's something that's in our capital improvement project budget, or whether it is started, ongoing, or if it's already been completed. All right. So examples of some of the things: infrastructure, under stormwater, East Rocks Drainage Improvement Project. That was a pretty big happening. The Tarpon Bay Road and Beach Road weirs. There are several projects going on with those. One rehabilitation of the weirs where we've had some issues just from wear and tear over age and time, some from the hurricane. And both of them were, or not both of them, we're also raising the flap of one of the weirs to make it a little bit higher, so more water, well, it will say more water can be held in, but it can hold more water. It's higher, so when high tides come in, it's not being overtopped by high tide. And then citywide drainage. There have been a lot of work. Our consultant has gone through and looked at our entire drainage system and pointed out all the different places. There was over 100 different projects, or large to small, that could be done across the city to improve the drainage or just make it a little bit better. Not all of them have completed, that's a lot of projects to do, but a lot of, it is a steady list that our Public Works Department has been working on. The sewer station, lift station upgrades. This is a fun bonus question. Does anybody know how many lift stations we have on the island?
173.
Close. 164. Now, an average city of this size would have about 20 to 30. So that's a lot more than most cities have to deal with. So with the lift station upgrades, we're looking at different levels of that. Some of it is raising electrical, some of it is putting generators. Those are being ranked and tiered depending on their priority. If it is a larger line and a feeder, so ones that are coming down the major thoroughways where lots of different lines are feeding into it, those are prioritized higher than ones that maybe have one or two houses on them. Apologies if your house is on one of those with one or two, but we would rather a station that is feeding 100 houses have a slightly higher priority than one that's feeding one or two. The Donex plant hardening. So that's a couple of things that have been doing there. They have been doing some hardening and raising of electrical infrastructure. They've also been shoring up a few other things from the storm. Transportation. Our two biggest projects, other than the shared use path that is going on and the ongoing roadway work. The very fun East Periwinkle Bridge that's hopefully starting, I think it's in our final design right now. And then the Sanibel boat ramp that was opened a few months ago. Planning and policy. Bob mentioned our Sanibel plan update. Hopefully you have been involved. If not, you've been paying attention. If you've read the Sanibel plan, you know there are a lot of things that really don't need to change about it, but there are some things that do need to be updated because changes have been made since the 70s or really even the 90s when that was last done. The vulnerability assessment and adaptation plan. The vulnerability assessment it did mapping and modeling for stormwater, sea level rise, storm surge, and what they call kind of a compilation of all of those. So it modeled just sea level rise, what will happen. So we call that high tide flooding, how king tides and high tides are going to change just due to water. You're not going to see a whole lot from the bay itself, but we have such a high water table, groundwater table. That means as sea levels rise, water just has nowhere to go anymore. It can't infiltrate as much because it's meeting water as it goes down. So that's where we're going to see more of an issue here. Storm surge, it kind of combines those, and then rainfall flooding. And then we run scenarios that what happens if all of those things happen at the same time? And how much of a difference does that make? So for our planning horizons for our infrastructure, we plan to a little bit higher because infrastructure is usually meant to last at least 30 to 50 years. So we're looking 30 to 50 years in the future. What does it look like then if we're going to build something now? Because there's no point in building to today's conditions if we want it to last for another 50 years. The adaptation plan, hopefully you all will participate in that. We will have a public workshop June, I believe, 17th, which will be both online and in person, where we're take all that stuff that we got out of the vulnerability assessment and make actual projects out of it, short, mid, and long term. What do we want to do, and where can we get to a point that we're comfortable with? The surface water management plan was just done. Updates to the ordinance that we talked about, and then updates to IT and HR. A lot of people don't think about this when it comes to resilience, but we found after Hurricane Ian, and our clerk's office has been super fun with this, is that a lot of our documents are paper-based. And what happens when paper gets wet? It doesn't love it. So they have been doing a couple of different things. One, they spent a lot of time pulling pages apart and trying to dry them out and scan them in. And then also just trying to digitize as much as possible. Same with HR. Most of their processes have gone online and digital so that we don't have all the papers that can get lost through time. IT has been making updates and also updating a lot of our maps. Hopefully you've seen some of the public maps that have come out in the past few months that have been helping for wayfinding and just a few different things to help residents understand where they are and where they're built. All right, environmental and social. Beach nourishment and dune plantings. Those are just because of nature of a barrier island. A barrier island and naturally does not stay in the same place. But when you build, you want it to stay in the same place. You don't want it to shift 5 miles down because your house is right here. So our beach nourishments is just to help that stay where our built environment, where we need it to be. Dune plantings is also helping to build our dunes back. We put social events on here because social resilience is very important. During a crisis event, you need that community. Sometimes that's the only thing that's holding you together is the people that are around you because you have so many things going on. So in the non-stressful times, we do help try to build that community through social events, workshops, classes, things of that nature. And then what should be starting, we're in the final design. This is the dune walkovers. They are being redesigned to work better than they did before. They actually acted as basically water thoroughfares and created gullies. So we are redesigning them to make them more resilient to future storms. All right. Whew, the good part, hopefully. Where are we going? All right. So mid and short term. This is not comprehensive because there are going to be things that come out of some of the planning efforts that we have going on that will add to this list. Our police station. We just got funding to build a new police station. It'll be kind of across the street from where the library is. It will be raised, it will be hardened, and it will be a better facility for our police staff. Creating resilience hubs. These are things that help the community after post-disaster, getting a space for you to find information, whether it's a cooling station, a place just to take a shower if you don't have water or come and charge your phone, things like that. We want to try to build places that have backup power and have backup facilities for our community. Increasing digital availability, whether that's through websites, through videos, through different ways, how we can get the information out to you guys all the time. So it's not at the last minute, you're like, what do I do now? You have it available beforehand. Public education, things like this, talks we'll have some classes and then also other topic discussions. Box culverts and lift station upgrades. So we already talked a little bit about the lift station upgrades. Our box culverts, so those are part of our stormwater system. It's basically collectors in our stormwater system. We've had some damage and also just some of them are just plain old. Infrastructure doesn't last forever, so we're doing upgrades to several of our box culverts so that they work at the design capacity. And then natural restoration. This is always an ongoing thing, whether it's dune plantings, there's a potential project at the Jordan Marsh, restoration, some things that have been done at Pond Apple Park, around the island, things that we can do on our own property. For the long term, raising and hardening critical infrastructure. That's a big one. It's also very expensive to do this. So it's going to be phased. It will not be everything all at once because let's face it, no one has that much money to do everything all at once. Some things, those will also be prioritized of what needs to be hardened and what needs in the now versus what isn't as needed. Energy reliability. We are in the middle of doing a strategic energy plan right now that is looking at reliability in the everyday, but also post-disaster. How can we have critical infrastructure and also potentially the community and community resources back up as fast as possible, whether that is from generators, solar, something like that, or helping to harden the grid itself. Updating policies and ordinances. This is the thing that people love and they hate. Because if it works in your favor, you love it. If it doesn't, you hate it until you love it. Because sometimes you hate it because it means you have to do something more and that's more expensive or harder to do. But in the long term, it helps you out. I know you're all thinking, but maybe I don't care about the long term because I won't be here. Well, we want to think that we all care about the island as a whole and in the future. And then implementing the adaptation plan. So we don't know exactly all the projects that will come out of the adaptation plan. Once that is complete, which should be by the end of this year, those projects, that's going to be my job, is to start implementing those. And they will be in different ways. We will have a short-term, long-term, basically the low-hanging fruit, the easy things that we can get done will get done faster. To the long-term planning, this needs to be done in the next like 50 years versus things that need to be done in the next like 5 to 10 years. So you'll start seeing those projects come along as well. All right. Ooh, push the wrong button. There we go. Almost done. And how can you get involved? These are just a few of the ways. I'm going to plug this because it's out right now and I want people to do it. Hopefully you saw the news flash. We do have a survey for the strategic energy plan out right now. This is a plan that can look at anything. We have one of the Department of Energy National Labs is doing the plan for us, and they will literally look at anything we ask them to look at. So this is your time to say, I want it to be city, I want it to be residential, I want it to be whatever I want it to be. Now, is it going to be, are we going to look at everybody's individual house? Probably not, unless you want to provide us with all of your data. But it will look at the whole of the city. Participate in adaptation plans. We're going to have a lot of things coming up with that, helping decide what projects are important and that we should prioritize. It's very helpful because, like I like to say, is that what we think is the most important may not be the same thing as what you think is most important. I may think that the sewer system is the most important thing to do, but you may think that the beach park is the most important. If everyone in the city, all the residents say no, hardening the beach parks is the most important thing to us, the sewer plant does not matter. Honestly, we're still going to do the sewer plant, but hopefully we come to consensus and some things that we might have put lower on our list and farther out in the timeline. If it is more important to the residents to get those done and it doesn't affect, not doing other things doesn't affect the health and well-being of the whole, then we can move those up the list. make suggestions. You'll get my contact information off of this. If there's something that you're like, I really need to understand this more, that's something that I'm working on right now in the background. It's because I've been asked questions and then of how to do, where can I find this, where can I find that? And I'm that person that I'll click on every link on every web page to see if I can find where that is. But I know most people aren't like that. So some things I haven't been able to find. So that tells me I need to make that page, or I need to make that information available. If there are things like that, then that's what I need to know so I can get the information out to you. Join a committee. Everybody loves a committee. We do have several. We have vegetation, we have all the plans have committees. There's loads of ways to get involved. Come to a council meeting. We have the mayor here. He loves to hear everybody talk at the council meetings. Now, we do love to have your input because it is important for us as we make decisions. All right. We're to the question part.
Yeah. Well, first, a round of applause. Thank you, Ashlee. So this is a COTI conversation. So this presentation is really just a chance to queue up your interest in your questions. Several of you sent questions in advance, and I have those here on my tablet. But I want to maybe get us started with some live discussion here. So I'll entertain any hands that would like to raise a question. Don't be shy. Again.
Actually, hi, and thanks. Great job. Appreciate you taking the time and very informative. It seems to me the most significant impact of the storms that you mentioned on the slide is storm surge. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are as to how we're going to deal with that. We had the 10 to 15 feet, we had the 3, with the 5 feet, and even those storms with the 5-foot storm surge, 200 miles offshore, were getting to us. Folks near us have taken measures to either diffuse or divert the storm surge. We have the dunes in Captiva, we have the breakwaters here when they redid the causeway, and I'm wondering, what's the plan for us? Because if we get hit with another Ian at 10 to 15 feet, some of the other things we're talking about doing here may not matter if we aren't able to come back and inhabit the island. So I'm wondering, what's the long-term plan to help reduce that impact? And at one of the meetings where we talked about, must have been 2 months ago, we had some folks in talking about resiliency and storm implications. One of the suggestions was that we could all raise our houses. That's wonderful, but that's not going to happen, right? That there's a lot of money in that, and a lot of people aren't able to do that. So I'm just wondering, how more broadly are we thinking about this? And again, we have neighbors taking action.
Yeah, thank you. So, okay, a few things with storm surge and with a lot of the actions that you talk about. Realistically, raising and hardening infrastructure is the only tried and true way. Yes, we can put breakwaters in. Yes, we can do things to diffuse it, but it's not going to stop the water. It's just going to it's going to slow the velocity, which is very important. I do know this comes to a few different things. I don't want to say things that we're going to do that we're not going to do. So we are looking at different options. There is nothing that has come to the forefront of like, this is what we're definitely doing to diffuse this or to do other things. I'll note that everything that we do shifts the water to someone else or shifts the energy to somewhere. That's where we come into for an island-wide solution. Is that if we shift, the energy is going somewhere. Sometimes it can be slowed just by the natural action. Sometimes it is pushed to someone else. So when you say things like the causeway, their goal is to keep the road up and operational. They really don't care about the I mean, they're not going to like destroy Sanibel, but their goal is to protect the road, not to protect the islands, not to protect anything else, is to protect the road itself. So they're not looking as much as to what the where they're pushing that energy, whereas us, if we put something, say, towards Bowman's Beach, you have to look at what else we're affecting. So as we're looking through these different options and doing the modeling for it, we're looking at, okay, this is great. We just saved 10 houses right here, but we also just pushed that wave energy to these other 5 houses and made it worse for them. So trying to balance that is hard. I will just say that, but we are, I mean, I can't give you a definitive answer of things that exactly that we're doing.
Would the adaptation plan be a potential place where some of those
Some of those, yeah,
innovations might come forward?
yeah, some of those can come out of that, because they are the people, our consultants are coastal engineers. That is what they do, is they work on specifically coastal engineering projects. So they will look at those models and run a model against an action, to see how it affects in different areas. Sometimes you can diffuse it to a public space that it doesn't matter as much. Sometimes you can't. So we'll, do you have a follow-up, Dave?
No, good points, and I appreciate that, but I just wonder, there are places where, for example, dunes have been very, very effective. I don't know what the ancillary impacts of those were. I don't know, but for example, I don't know enough about what Captiva did, but it seems to me they have dunes up and down the coast, right? It's not particular places. So if they've done that, then potentially it's being diffused to us.
So, okay,
And at some point,
Yeah.
we need to look out for our residents'
Yes.
property as well, right? So I'll let you
This-
guys think about that, but
Yeah.
that's a huge economic issue.
I can tell you this with the dunes. So natural dunes on Sanibel are not tall. They are the dunes that you
Sure.
see out there right now.
Sure.
Which are being rebuilt and replanted, and that's why we're doing the replantings, is to get them back up. Because we did see that they were helpful in diffusing the energy as they came through. Because of our regulations and it being a sanctuary island that is meant to be as natural as possible, our current regulations and as a sanctuary island, as a preserve, don't allow us to build dunes that would be unnaturally high, which is what Captiva has done. Would we do that in the future? Who knows? That may be a down the road. Right now, I don't know how, because you're gonna have in everything. You're gonna have the people complaining that you did it, and you're gonna have the people complaining that you didn't do it. Either way, right now, I don't know that it's a feasibility at this exact moment to build the dunes bigger, more than what they naturally would be. What we're doing with the adaptation plan is that we go through a phase where everything's on the table. Just throw everything out there. Not all of that's gonna make it into the plan, because people are gonna throw out there, like, build a 20-foot seawall around the island. Is that ever gonna happen? No.
Sure.
But somebody might put it out there. What we are gonna do is that in the appendix of the plan, every idea that has been brought up is gonna be there, because while it may not be viable right now, it may be the only option in a few years. Because this is a living document. It's not something we do once and then it goes on and we never do it again. Every few years, we're gonna update, and maybe in 5 years, okay, now that's an option. Now we bring that back forward as something. So, right now, we'll see. Maybe that does come out, maybe that is gonna be one of the best options, but that is a snowball effect when we start thinking about this, doing things that are outside the natural order.
I think I mentioned in my introduction that these are complicated questions. But you started us off with a really good one, because those are difficult questions to resolve. Who else? Do I see another hand?
I don't need that.
We're recording this, so I want to get your voice on the tape.
Well, I think the best thing is the plant infused dunes. Doesn't have to be hot,
Mhm.
plant infused. They do work, but it has to be continuous,
Yes,
right? Because I don't know if anyone here lived through Sandy, but we had a house on Barnaby Bay you know, when Sandy hit in Jersey. And what broke Barnegat Bay was the breach in the walls in Manlocan.
Yeah.
And if that breach did not occur, Barnegat Bay would not have flooded. But we can't do that stone wall, but we can do plant infused.
Mhm.
What I'm bringing up is you started the right idea over by the lighthouse. I don't know if anyone's looked at those plants recently. They don't look too happy. They could use, I mean, yes, it just rained now, but I don't see why, you know, Sanibel can't get their hogs out there with tankers. Just like when they planted the straw grass on the islands
Mhm.
to get it going, because some of those plants aren't gonna make it. So that was really a waste of time, but the idea is correct. That was what we'll say. Breakwaters and all that stuff is out of the question. That will never happen because then you lose what Sanibel is. What is Sanibel known for? The shells.
Yeah.
It's known for the turtles.
Yep.
You build breakwaters, it's all over. It's history.
I
But bring up about getting those plants healthy. Otherwise, you just wasted your time.
Yeah, I will note, we did, it has been acknowledged. We have been in a drought, which no one expected. But also, in the next year-ish, so Natural Resources has planted about 250,000-ish plants over the past couple of years. And this year, they have funding to do, I want to say it's another like 50 or 60,000 plants. So those areas that we know need, like, we're looking, some of it is concentrating on those like beach access things that we know there are issues while they do the beach walkovers, and where they were just sand and you have those breaks. We're looking at raised beach walkovers so that the plants are still there. So we are, that is very much acknowledged, is when you look at the pictures, post Ian, is just the rivulets of where the walkovers were, where the breaks were. So that's something that we are planning for and taking steps as we have funding to do the additional plantings and making sure that we do have that healthy, continuous planting line.
You mentioned a little bit about the, I don't know what you call them, the cut throughs that we got on the beach, those big valleys that went out there. And I know that we had hundreds of them. And it seems like the only way to, in my mind, is you got to put a lot of rock in there to give it something to not wash away. But did they consider doing that before they fill them up with more sand, or is that not a plan to fill them with rock? And could you explain kind of some of the methods that they may be using?
So filling with rock hasn't been in the plan to do. A lot of the ones that you see, it's because where you do have, like you were talking, you don't have the continuous plants. It's where paths were. Water is going to go in the path of least resistance, and that is going to be a cleared open area. So you got those a lot, because if you think about, everybody has a house that's on the beach and they all have a path walking down to the beach. So it's all of those places that you're seeing, those individual. From the city's perspective, there's a lot of different things when you're doing beach nourishment. Legally, sand has to match sand. So us putting rock changes the shape of the beach. It changes the character of the beach. So
You fill it with sand, rock.
we do fill it with sand, but then it changes how the beach works, and there's a whole lot of processes that go into that. But even if you put the rock there, the sand would still potentially wash away from that. The plants themselves are what's going to hold most of that sand there. I mean, did you have a?
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's a partial answer to this, and that is the straight beach cut throughs, the boardwalks that went straight to the beach from the condos or whatever, they're the ones that washed out.
Yeah.
If you put a zigzag in the boardwalk, it's less likely to wash out. In our condo, that's one of the things we did. We went from a straight boardwalk to a zigzag. You know, so we'll see how it works the next time we have a washout, but it should be a lot better.
It is true. That's why rivers They meander, they don't go straight. It's just a velocity thing. Even if it does go down your path, it's gonna go slower, so it's not gonna wash out as much or as deep. It has time to spread with that. But yeah, Sanibel's purposes, really planting is our biggest thing, and then doing walkovers that are not straight lines of broken plants. It is either above the dune or doing some where it isn't possible to do a boardwalk, doing some meandering paths as well.
Actually, we had some questions that came in advance when people registered, and this is another difficult one for you, so I'll just lay it out there. What will happen to Sanibel with sea level rise? How will that affect hurricane planning, etc.?
So positive with that is that we have done the vulnerability assessment. We have mapped and modeled what would happen where our sea level, where the flooding would happen, where the storm surge is coming into. So while a storm is not predictable, it is fairly predictable of how the water will act post a storm. And if we do look at our models and we look versus what happened at Ian, the way the models are built is that they use real storms to validate the model. So if they build it and then they use and it doesn't react the way a real storm did, they know that they have to calibrate it a little bit differently. So we do have that now with the adaptation plan. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at that future. We're looking at future sea level rise for the everyday. We're looking at future storm surge with the sea level rise. And then if you throw on top of that, you get a rainstorm with it. What's that going to look like? We know the heights, we know where the water's going and how the depth of the water across the island. Because if you notice after a lot of the storms, sometimes water doesn't go where you thought it would go, and it's deep. Like some houses only got maybe 5 feet and some got 13 feet. And why is it going in wonky ways? So those are the things that we're going to be looking at for future city infrastructure and planning, making sure that we build to that future, and also making sure that our policies and ordinances match what needs to happen. So if houses need to go higher than they currently are, as they get rebuilt, we'll look at that. There is a point where you have to do a cutoff. While we have modeled a 500-year storm, it is virtually impossible to build to a 500-year storm. It is, even if you could physically do it, you can't afford to do it. So there is a point that certain infrastructure will be built to a higher standard than others, depending on the criticality of it. And some, it's just going to be underwater, unfortunately, because that's
We're on a
that's
bigger
nature.
island.
We're not going to build a 10-foot high road, because then your driveways are going to be straight up and down and you're going to be in a valley. And what's the point of having a 10-foot high road if everything else is underwater?
We'll have a
causeway. Well, you'll have the causeway.
We do have a couple more questions here. Some of them you've already answered in your discussion, but let me get to a couple more. And this might be fresh in your mind from the vulnerability assessment. What is the estimated annual risk of flooding events for Sanibel in the near future, next 5 to 10 years? And then here's the question you won't want to answer, but it's here, which is, was Ian, Helene, and Milton a new trend or unfortunate luck?
So here's the thing with storms that most people think. The probability of a storm is always the same. No matter if you just had a 100-year storm, it's always, the probability is 0.1% all the time. It doesn't matter if you just had one. So the probabilities never change. What changes is the other factors that are surrounded it, the water temperature. Do we have an extremely hot year? So the water temperatures are now higher, which make hurricanes which are more conducive to hurricanes, that make them stronger, make them more likely. So those things, and we are seeing water temperatures are rising and temperatures are increasing. So do we expect more storms? If you look through, if you look through the past, which we like to look to the future, but we have to look to the past as well. The number of storms has not actually increased really over the years. It may seem like it has. The severity is increasing. So as we go through planning, we just start planning for bigger storms versus more storms. Which is unfortunate because no one wants a bigger storm.
Well, that might tee up the next question, which is, what is the city looking at doing to reduce its carbon footprint?
So this is where we're getting into a little bit, and that's where you can put in your input in the energy plan. So some things that we are looking at, we do have a few. We have looked at transitioning some of our fleet into EVs, which there are reasons that we do and there are reasons that we don't on an island, because we don't have a place to store them on the island high enough outside the water. So thinking of logistics of moving vehicles off the island on storms, those are our pros and cons and how much we are willing to do and how much we have time to do. Other things that we're looking at through the energy plan, do we want to look at other alternative energy sources like solar or other renewable energies? Right now, all of our backup energy sources, except for the building and planning department, are either diesel or propane generators. Fun fact, the building and planning department is solar plus battery. So they are actually made so they can run post-storm off the grid completely. So some part of that energy plan is looking at where it is feasible to do renewables. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. We have limitations, like for the wastewater plant, we just simply don't have the space for the amount of energy that's needed. Other things are just, for conservation lands, but some things we can. City Hall potentially, rec center, looking at those things.
And I've got one more question here before I see if there's any more in the audience, which is, you talked about how expensive some of these projects can be. So the question is, as Sanibel has brought you on as the Chief Resilience Officer, has conducted, or is conducting a number of studies, are these sort of foundations for helping the city to attract the dollars that it might need for some of the things that it would want to work on?
Yes. So I know sometimes it seems very annoying that we have a lot of plans, but if you don't have a plan, funders won't fund you. If you just, a lot of times, and what we see, especially with resilience planning, they will tell you the more times your project shows up in a different plan, the more points you get towards your funding. So if your project is in your stormwater plan and in your resilience plan and in your transportation plan, we see that that's a high priority for you. You care a lot about it. You thought it through. We'll fund it. Right now, funding, while it is part of my job to find funding, on all levels is a little bit on the touchy side, for depending on what it is. Typically, things like roadways and critical infrastructure like water and wastewater, police and fire, though that funding doesn't go away with any administration and changes in political will. Other things do. And it's very dependent on who cares about what. So right now, what we're seeing come through with a lot of this and what you'll see some concentrations on is probably more of that infrastructure, because that's what we can get money for. Other things that may be important. It's finding that who we can find funding from, and it may not be in the next couple of years, it may be in like 4 years, but our goal is that when the funding becomes available, we are ready to apply for it immediately, and we don't have to think through what we would apply for. We know the projects that are there for it.
Yes.
Hi, this is a little off subject, but you talked about the East Periwinkle Bridge.
Mhm.
They just rebuilt it, then, didn't they, and reinforce it?
So they did some reinforcements, post Ian, basically to get it back operational. But what they're doing with the rebuilding it is, one of the issues with the East Periwinkle Bridge is that, and why they had, some damage to it is because it narrowed under the bridge, which basically just caused a backlog of force of water. So it damaged the pilings because it narrowed the space from where the canals were. So when they fixed it so that we have a bridge. It's still functional, it is operational, but in the event of another storm, we want to make it more resilient so that they'll be widening it under the bridge to be the same width as the canals, so that you don't have that force that's going onto the pilings, and it'll be better able to withstand the water.
It'll be higher?
Slightly. Yes.
So, I guess I've got a question. First, thank you for everything that's been done. I know there's a lot that has been done. We're heading into another hurricane season. We're 4 years from Ian and a couple of years from Milton and Helene. If any of those events occurred this year, would we see a better result, a similar result, hopefully not a worse result than we did 4 years ago or 2 years ago? And if it's better, why is it going to be better?
I think you'll see some better, because we have done some hardening of things. We've done clearing and helping of the stormwater system for helping flow. And a storm surge, FYI, a stormwater system is never built for storm surge. It is not, it's gonna help water get out, but it is not built to contain storm surge. So our stormwater system, it will help water once it flows back out. We'll see some, at least since post Helene and Milton, a lot of our vegetation is starting to come back post. So that will be helpful, at least for some of the water, the velocity and the diffusion of that. Our dune plantings are younger, so they're not as established as they were pre-Ian, but they are more established than they were pre-Helene and Milton. So you're gonna get a mix of what your hardened infrastructure, I think we're gonna do better. Our natural, we're still in a balance with that. So yes, it'll help diffuse, but is it back to what it was pre-Ian? Not everywhere. Some places, yes, some places, no. So that's a hard question of like, will we be better off? Will we not? Yes, we will. But also some places where that relied heavily on the natural defenses, they may be at the same level in the same space, because it takes time to build that back up.
I'll just add to that, Ashlee, that many of you probably participated in the recent SanCap Resilience Community Survey. Over 1,000 people did complete that. And the reports from homeowners is that there's been a lot of investment in increasing the resilience of their built infrastructure, either not refinishing ground level spaces or refinishing them with flood resistant materials. We were talking about elevated buildings earlier, and that is a expensive commitment, but we have seen dozens of homes elevated on the island. I think just in the survey itself, there were over 80 reported home elevations since Hurricane Ian. So there are a number of things that individuals have done that also have put us in a better position.
And with that, we're seeing a lot of people just even raising your pool pumps, raising your electrical infrastructure. That in itself is very helpful. Hopefully, the people who rebuilt underground level that weren't supposed to be on the ground level, they just filled in a garage or whatever. They did not continue to use it for living space afterwards, and it is a storage space or as was attended. But yeah, I do think we'll see a lot of better managed businesses as well. We've seen a lot of businesses that are doing a lot of hardening, some that are raising.
All right, we're gonna do one more question. We'll wrap up.
Thanks for your thoughtful answers to difficult questions. As a marine biologist, as well as a resilience officer, do you have any thoughts about whether beach renourishment has changed the marine environment close to the beach? I ask this as a fisher person.
Hi, so that's a fun one. I don't think it is solely responsible if there are changes, because with any storm, with anything, there's a lot of scouring, there's a lot of things that go into that. It's hard to say beach nourishment in itself has changed. Because Sanibel already has a shallow shelf that goes out. So wouldn't say there would be massive changes. In a barrier island, it's meant to shift anyway. So you're basically putting it back to where it would have been, 10, 15, 20 years ago versus where it would be. So you're kind of, it may be slightly different than what it was 2 years ago, but it would be kind of the same as it was 15 years ago, before the shifts happened. I know there have been talks of like with fishermen that they're not seeing the same fish around. They're not seeing as many. Part of that is because not necessarily beach nourishment. It is also because their nursery habitats were disturbed during the storms. So they're just not as many, or they're shifting more offshore, or they're shifting further towards the mainland. Eventually they will come back when the habitats come back. But it does take time with that. I have a question.
One more.
One thing I haven't heard this evening is who is it that you're planning for? This is a discussion my friends and I have been having. Is it the snowbirds? Is it the permanent residents? Is it the tourists? I was recently in Venice, and 75% of the residents of Venice have left for the mainland. And I'm concerned about the future of Sanibel and its demographics. To some of us who are residents, we're very concerned about short-term rentals, unofficial short-term rentals where they're required to rent for 30 days, but they have people in and out, illegal, I guess you would call them sub-renters. And in all this big discussion, I want to know, who are your priorities? What part of the, as you put up initially stakeholders, are you focusing on? I think sometimes the people who are here the most feel like they're the last on the list.
So as a whole, we don't specifically plan for one group. We plan for the whole on a city level. Depending on what the service is, depends on how we have to plan for it. For instance, if we're planning for wastewater, we plan for basically the season, because you have to plan for the most that's there. Same with transportation, you're planning for the surges for the larger things. Services and building, we want all structures. I mean, we do realize that there are owners, there are part-timers, there's snowbirds, but realistically, we want people to stay in any capacity. We would love our more long-term residents that are here year-round. We recognize that there are a lot of people who don't want to contend with hurricane season. So they do go back and forth. So when we're doing the planning, like I said, we tend to not pick a demographic specifically that we plan for. Because, and it's really hard sometimes because you hear, it's the voices that you hear, it's the people who do the input. So that I will do a plug for if you feel like you're not being heard, sometimes it's because the loudest voice is the snowbirds, it's the people who are rentals, it's the business community that are doing the talking. So we do encourage, that's why we do encourage you to put your information out, because if we do a survey and it's only business people, we don't know what the residential full-time residents versus part-time residents, we don't know what it is that you are looking for. So you do tend to go with what the numbers are. But generally speaking, as a city system, we don't kind of pick and choose. We have to plan for kind of all contingencies, which is real hard.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here and being a part of this conversation. And let's give Ashlee another round. And our board and Ashlee will stick around for a couple of minutes if you have additional questions you want to catch any of this on. Thanks again.
I will say, if you do go to the website, it does have all the information.